Have you ever poured your heart into others, only to snap in a moment of rage that scared even you? If you're an empath, someone who feels the world's pain like it's your own, that moment wasn't your failure. It was your awakening. Welcome to Jung Psyche Hub, where we're diving into Carl Jung's profound truth about why empaths eventually snap and become the shadow they feared. You've carried others' burdens, silenced your anger, and worn the mask of the perfect helper. But beneath that mask, a hidden part of you, your shadow, has been screaming for attention. Carl Jung says that snap isn't a breakdown, it's a breakthrough, a call to embrace your full self, darkness and all. Being an empath is both a gift and a curse. You feel others' joy and pain so deeply that you lose yourself in their chaos. But when you suppress your own needs, your anger, your boundaries, the shadow grows, waiting to erupt. This 40-minute journey will show you why that eruption happens, how it's rooted in your childhood, and how Carl Jung's shadow work can turn your pain into power through stories like Sarah's, who burned out saving others, and James, who found strength in his rage. You'll see you're not alone. Join us for 5 chapters that reveal why empaths snap, how to embrace your shadow, and how to rise as a sovereign empath, ready to uncover the truth. Let's dive into Chapter 1. Empaths are the world's feelers. The ones who sense emotions others barely notice: a glance of sadness, a tremble in a voice, the weight of an unspoken fear. If you're an empath, you don't just understand people, you feel them, as if their joys and pains flow through your veins. Carl Jung saw this as both a gift and a curse, a divine ability to connect, but a dangerous path that can drown you in others' chaos. In this chapter, we'll explore what makes empaths unique, why their sensitivity is both a superpower and a burden, and how Carl Jung's concept of the shadow explains why empaths often lose themselves. This isn't just about feeling deeply, it's about understanding why you might be carrying wounds that aren't even yours. Let's start with what it means to be an empath. Carl Jung's psychology suggests empaths are wired to tap into the collective unconscious, a shared pool of human emotions and experiences. You pick up on the subtle currents of a room, someone's hidden grief, a friend's silent anger, or a stranger's fleeting joy. It's like you're a finely tuned radio, catching signals others miss. But here's the catch: while you're busy absorbing the world's emotions, you often neglect your own. You become so focused on others fixing their pain, soothing their fears, that you forget to listen to the quiet voice inside you. Carl Jung called this a misalignment, a disconnect from your true self. And it's where the empath's curse begins. This curse isn't just about feeling too much, it's about losing yourself in the process. Empaths often suppress their own emotions, anger, frustration, or even simple needs to keep the peace. Carl Jung would say this pushes those emotions into the shadow, the hidden part of your psyche, where everything you deny festers. Your shadow isn't evil, it's just the parts of you you've been taught to hide. Like the anger you swallow to seem kind, or the boundaries you avoid to stay loved. For empaths, this shadow grows heavy, filled with unexpressed pain and unmet needs, waiting for the moment it can no longer be ignored. To make this real, meet Sarah, a 30-year-old social worker from Portland. Sarah always knew she was different. At work, she could sense a client's despair before they spoke. At home, she felt her roommate's stress, like a storm cloud. She prided herself on being the one who listened, who cared, who fixed things. But over time, Sarah noticed a quiet resentment building. She was exhausted, snapping at small things: a late co-worker, a friend's careless comment. She felt guilty for these outbursts, thinking, "I'm supposed to be the kind one. What's Wrong with Me? Sarah's story is classic empath. Her gift of feeling deeply came with a curse of neglecting herself. She was so busy carrying others' pain that she buried her own, letting her shadow grow in silence. Carl Jung's insight here is profound. Empaths aren't inherently whole, just like no one is. The psyche is a balance of opposites, light and dark, giving and receiving, persona and shadow. Empaths, by habit, pour their energy outward, crafting a persona, the mask of the selfless helper, to feel safe and loved. But every time you say, "I'm fine," when you're not, or forgive a boundary crossed too quickly, you're feeding your shadow. That shadow holds your suppressed anger, your unspoken needs, even your right to say no. And the longer you ignore it, the louder it gets, whispering in restless dreams or sudden bursts of frustration you can't explain. Why does this happen? Carl Jung pointed to childhood. Many empaths grow up in environments where love feels conditional. If you were good, quiet, or helpful, you were praised. If you were angry or needy, you were shamed. Sarah, for example, grew up with a parent who leaned on her to keep the peace during family arguments. She learned to sense her mother's mood and adjust herself to avoid conflict. Over time, this wired her to prioritize others' emotions over her own. Carl Jung called this a survival mechanism. You become the empath to feel safe, but at the cost of your own voice. That cost builds, turning your gift into a curse that leaves you drained, resentful, and disconnected from yourself. So, what's the first step to breaking this cycle? Acknowledge your gift and its cost. Recognize that your empathy is beautiful. It connects you to the world in ways others can't imagine. But it's also a weight you don't have to carry alone. Carl Jung's work teaches that the shadow only grows when ignored. Start by noticing when you're taking on too much, when a friend's pain feels like yours, or when you say yes but mean no. Try this pause for a moment each day and ask, "What am I feeling right now?" Write it down. Even if it's anger or exhaustion, this simple act begins to shine a light on your shadow, helping you reclaim the parts of yourself you've pushed away. This isn't about blaming yourself for feeling too much. It's about honoring your depth while protecting your energy. Sarah started this journey by journaling her feelings after work. She was shocked to see how much resentment she'd buried under her kind exterior. That awareness was her first step toward balance. Your empathy makes you extraordinary, but it's not your whole story. You're allowed to feel your own pain. Set your own boundaries, and choose yourself without guilt. Have you ever felt drained by carrying others' emotions? Maybe you've sensed a quiet resentment you couldn't name. Share your story in the comments. We're all on this journey together. In the next chapter, we'll dive into why empaths snap and how that moment, far from failure, is a sacred breakthrough. Stay with us as we uncover Carl Jung's truth about your shadow. You've been there one moment. You're the calm, caring empath, holding space for everyone else's pain. The next, you're snapping, lashing out, shutting down, or walking away in a storm of emotions you didn't even know you had. If you're an empath, that moment of losing control can feel like a betrayal of who you are. But Carl Jung's wisdom reveals a deeper truth. Snapping isn't your failure. It's your psyche's desperate cry for balance. In this chapter, we'll uncover why empaths snap, how Carl Jung's concept of enantiodromia explains this explosive moment, and why it's not a breakdown, but a sacred breakthrough that sets the stage for healing. Let's dive into the heart of it. Empaths are wired to absorb the world's emotions, but this gift comes with a shadow. Carl Jung taught that the shadow, the hidden parts of your psyche, holds everything you push away: anger, resentment, or the need to say no. As an empath, you've likely spent years suppressing these feelings to keep the peace. You bite your tongue when someone crosses a line, smile through exhaustion, or forgive betrayals to avoid conflict. But Carl Jung's concept of enantiodromia, the idea that anything suppressed too long turns into its opposite, explains why this can't last. Your kindness, stretched to its limit, flips into rage. Your patience becomes resentment. Your selflessness erupts into a fierce need to reclaim yourself. This eruption isn't random. It's the shadow demanding to be seen. When you pour all your energy into others, ignoring your own needs, the shadow grows in the unconscious, gathering force like a storm. Carl Jung believed the unconscious doesn't stay silent forever. It speaks through restless dreams, sudden outbursts, or moments when you can't take it anymore. That snap is your psyche's way of saying, enough. It's not a sign you're broken. It's proof your soul is fighting to be whole. To make this real, meet James, a 3-4-year-old high school teacher from Denver. James was the go-to person for his students. Always patient, always listening. Even when they disrespected him, he felt their struggles, broken homes, academic pressure, and took pride in being their rock. But one day, a student's snide remark pushed him over the edge. James exploded, raising his voice in a way that shocked everyone, including himself. He left the classroom shaking, thinking, I'm not that person. What's happening to me? That moment haunted him. But it wasn't failure. It was his shadow breaking through. Years of swallowing frustration, of being the nice guy, had built a pressure he could no longer contain. Carl Jung would say, James's snap was inevitable. The shadow doesn't vanish when you ignore it. It festers, showing up in nightmares or sudden rage. For empaths, this is especially potent because your shadow holds the emotions you've been taught are wrong: anger, selfishness, or the urge to walk away. In James's case, his shadow was screaming for boundaries, for the right to say, I'm not okay with this. Carl Jung's enantiodromia explains this. Flip, the more you cling to the persona of the perfect empath, the more violently the shadow erupts. It's not about becoming cruel, it's about reclaiming the parts of you that demand respect. Why does the snap feel so jarring? Because empaths often live with a split psyche. Carl Jung taught that the psyche seeks wholeness, a balance of opposites, light and dark, giving and receiving. But empaths, conditioned to prioritize others, tilt too far toward giving. You absorb a friend's pain, forgive a co-worker's betrayal, or stay in a toxic relationship to help. Each time, you push your own needs deeper into the shadow. That pressure builds until it bursts, often in ways that scare you: a shouting match, a cold withdrawal, or a decision to cut someone off. That moment feels like losing yourself. But Carl Jung would call it a breakthrough, a chance to meet the shadow you've ignored. So, how do you navigate this? Start by seeing the snap as a signal, not shame. It's your psyche waving a red flag, saying, pay attention to me. Try this the next time you feel that surge of anger or urge to shut down. Pause and breathe. Ask yourself, what am I really feeling? What need have I ignored? Write it down, even if it's messy. This begins to bridge the gap between your conscious self and your shadow. James did this after his outburst. He started journaling, realizing his snap came from years of letting students and colleagues cross his boundaries. That awareness was his first step toward balance. This snap isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of a deeper one. It's your psyche demanding you stop living for others and start living for yourself. Carl Jung's wisdom reminds us that the shadow isn't your enemy. It's a teacher, pushing you toward wholeness. When did you last snap and feel your shadow emerge? Maybe it was a moment of anger or a quiet decision to walk away. Share your story in the comments. Your experience could resonate with someone else. In the next chapter, we'll explore why empaths fear their shadow and how it's rooted in the wounds of childhood. Stay with us as we uncover the truth behind your hidden self. If you're an empath, you've probably felt it a quiet dread when anger bubbles up, a pang of guilt when you want to say no, or a fear that setting boundaries makes you selfish. These aren't just fleeting emotions, they're signs of the shadow, the hidden part of your psyche you've been taught to fear. Carl Jung taught that the shadow holds everything you've pushed away to be good: anger, resentment, even your right to put yourself first. For empaths, this shadow feels like a monster because it threatens the image you've built, the kind, selfless helper. In this chapter, we'll explore why empaths fear their shadow, how it's rooted in childhood wounds, and why facing it is the first step to reclaiming your power. Let's start with the shadow itself. Carl Jung described the shadow as the unconscious part of your psyche. Home to traits you've been taught are unacceptable anger, selfishness, or the urge to walk away. For empaths, the shadow is especially heavy because you've spent years suppressing these traits to maintain your persona, the mask you wear to be loved. Your persona is the good empath, always giving, always understanding, never angry, but every time you swallow your frustration or forgive a betrayal too quickly, you're feeding the shadow. It doesn't disappear, it grows, lurking in your dreams or bursting out in moments you can't control. Why does the shadow feel so terrifying? Because empaths are often shaped by childhood environments where love came with strings attached. Carl Jung believed early experiences forge our psyche's foundation. If you grew up in a home where you were praised for being quiet, helpful, or selfless, but shamed for being angry or needy, you learned a dangerous lesson: goodness equals love, while darkness equals rejection. This creates a split. Your persona becomes the angel, while your shadow holds the demon of your suppressed emotions. The fear isn't just about feeling angry, it's about believing that anger makes you unlovable. To make this real, meet Emma, a 28-year-old artist from Chicago. Emma was the peacekeeper in her family, always soothing her parents' arguments or comforting her siblings. When she was upset, her mother would say, "Don't be selfish, think of others." Over time, Emma learned to bury her anger and needs to feel safe. As an adult, she became an empath who absorbed everyone's emotions, friends' breakups, co-workers' stress while ignoring her own. But when a close friend repeatedly dismissed her feelings, Emma felt a rage. She couldn't explain. She didn't act on it. But the intensity scared her. "I'm not supposed to be like this," she thought. That fear was her shadow knocking, demanding to be seen. Carl Jung's insight here is crucial. The shadow isn't your enemy. It's a part of you crying for acknowledgement. Emma's rage wasn't a flaw. It was her psyche signaling unmet needs. The shadow forms when you're taught to hide parts of yourself to survive. For empaths, this often starts in childhood, where you become hyper-attuned to others' emotions to avoid conflict or abandonment. Emma's role as the family peacekeeper wired her to prioritize others, but it left her shadow heavy with unexpressed anger and unspoken boundaries. Carl Jung called this a persona-shadow split, where the more you cling to being good, the darker your shadow grows. This split isn't just personal, it's reinforced by culture. Society celebrates empaths as selfless heroes, praising you for giving endlessly. But Carl Jung warned that denying the shadow creates imbalance. When you suppress anger to seem kind, or avoid conflict to stay loved. You're not at peace. You're at war with yourself. That war shows up in restless dreams, like Emma's nightmares of being trapped in a burning house, or in moments when you snap and feel like a stranger to yourself. The shadow isn't evil. It's the part of you that says, "I matter too." Ignoring it only makes it louder. So, how do you face the shadow you feared? Start by naming it without shame. Try this. Take a moment to write down a time you felt angry or wanted to say no but didn't. Ask, what was I afraid of losing if I spoke up for Emma? Journaling revealed her fear of being selfish came from her mother's words. Next, visualize your shadow. Carl Jung's active imagination technique can help picture your shadow as a figure, a stormy cloud, a fierce warrior, or even a younger you. Ask, what do you need? Listen without judgment. This begins to bridge the gap between your persona and shadow, easing the fear. Facing your shadow doesn't mean becoming cruel. It means reclaiming your right to feel, to set boundaries, to exist fully. Emma started small, telling her friend, "I need space when you dismiss me." It felt terrifying, but it was liberating. Her shadow wasn't a monster, it was her strength, waiting to be claimed. Carl Jung's wisdom reminds us that the shadow is part of your wholeness. By facing it, you stop fearing it and start growing. What part of yourself have you hidden to be loved? Maybe it's anger, a need for rest, or a boundary you've avoided. Share your story in the comments. Your truth could inspire someone else. In the next chapter, we'll explore how to heal through Carl Jung's shadow work, turning your fear into power. Stay with us as we uncover the path to your true self. You felt the snap the moment your empath heart erupted in anger or withdrew in silence, revealing a shadow you feared. That moment wasn't the end. It was an invitation to heal. Carl Jung's shadow work offers empaths a path to transform that fear into power, not by banishing the shadow, but by embracing it. This isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming whole. Learning to set boundaries, say no, and love yourself without guilt. In this chapter, we'll explore how shadow work helps empaths heal, why integrating your shadow is the key to freedom, and practical steps to start this journey. Your shadow isn't your enemy, it's your guide to a stronger, truer you. Let's start with what shadow work is. Carl Jung taught that the shadow holds the parts of you you've hidden: anger, resentment, or the need to prioritize yourself. For empaths, these are the emotions you suppress to stay the good helper. Shadow work is the process of bringing those parts into the light, not to judge them, but to understand them. It's about facing the rage you buried to seem kind, or the boundaries you avoided to feel loved. Carl Jung believed this integration is part of individuation, the journey to become your whole self. By meeting your shadow, you stop fighting yourself and start reclaiming your power. Why is this so vital for empaths? Because your sensitivity makes you a sponge, absorbing others' pain while ignoring your own. That imbalance builds a shadow heavy with unexpressed needs, leading to snaps that scare you. Shadow work flips the script. Instead of fearing your anger, you learn from it. Instead of guilt for saying no, you see it as self-respect. Carl Jung's insight is profound. The shadow isn't evil, it's exiled strength. By integrating it, you gain the clarity to protect your energy and the courage to live authentically. To make this real, let's return to Sarah, the 30-year-old social worker from Portland we met in Chapter 1. Sarah was burned out, resentful from carrying her client's pain while ignoring her own. After snapping at a co-worker, she felt ashamed, fearing she'd become selfish. A therapist introduced her to Jungian shadow work. starting with journaling. Sarah wrote about a time she felt angry when a colleague dumped extra work on her. She asked, "Why didn't I say no?" The answer was fear. Fear of being seen as unkind. A lesson from her childhood as the family fixer. This insight was a revelation. Her shadow wasn't a flaw. It was her unmet need for boundaries. Sarah then tried active imagination, a Jungian technique where you dialogue with your shadow. She closed her eyes and pictured her anger as a fiery figure. "What do you want?" she asked. The figure replied, "To be heard." Over weeks, Sarah journaled these dialogues. Realizing her anger was protecting her from exhaustion, she started setting small boundaries, saying no to extra tasks or taking breaks when overwhelmed. Each step felt scary, but it lightened her load. Shadow work didn't erase her empathy. It gave her the strength to balance it with self-care. Carl Jung's Individuation ties this together. Individuation isn't about being perfect. It's about embracing your opposites, kindness and anger, giving and receiving. For empaths, this means accepting that you can be caring and assertive, selfless and self-prioritizing. Shadow work helps you integrate these parts, so you're not split between the good empath and the bad shadow. This integration frees you from the cycle of absorbing others' pain, snapping, and feeling guilty. You become a whole person, capable of love without self-destruction. So, how do you start shadow work? Here are 3 practical steps. First, journal your triggers. Write about a time you snapped or felt resentment. Ask, what was I feeling? What need was ignored? This names your shadow without shame. Second, practice active imagination. Picture your shadow as a figure, place, or symbol. Ask, what do you need to tell me? Write down what comes up, even if it feels strange. Third, set one boundary. Start small. Say no to a request that drains you, or ask for space in a relationship. Notice how it feels scary, but empowering. These steps don't fix everything overnight, but they begin the process of integration. Let's be clear. Shadow work isn't about indulging anger or becoming cold. It's about balance. Carl Jung warned that denying the shadow makes you a victim to it, snapping unexpectedly, or attracting people who exploit your empathy. But facing it gives you discernment. Sarah, for example, stopped letting colleagues overload her with work. She didn't become cruel. She became clear. Her boundaries attracted respect, not rejection. Carl Jung would call this the alchemy of the psyche, turning the lead of fear into the gold of self-respect. This process takes courage because it challenges how you see yourself. Empaths often cling to the good persona, fearing that acknowledging anger means losing their identity. But Carl Jung's wisdom is liberating your shadow. Doesn't make you less, it makes you more. By facing it, you reclaim the strength to say, I'm allowed to feel angry. I'm allowed to rest. I'm allowed to be me. Each step in shadow work is a step toward freedom, where your empathy becomes a choice, not a chain. And here's the beauty. Shadow work doesn't just heal you, it transforms how you show up in the world. Sarah's clients noticed her new calm, not because she absorbed their pain, but because she stood grounded in herself. Her empathy became a gift she shared, not a burden she carried. Carl Jung believed this is the path to wholeness, not rejecting your sensitivity, but balancing it with strength. What's one boundary you've set or want to set to protect your energy? Maybe it's saying no to a draining friend or taking time for yourself. Share your story in the comments. Your courage could light the way for someone else. In the next chapter, we'll explore the rise of the sovereign empath, a version of you who's integrated, fearless, and free to love without losing themselves. Stay with us as we uncover the power of your whole self. You faced your shadow, felt the snap, and begun the healing work of integration. Now, something extraordinary emerges, the sovereign empath. This isn't the drained, people-pleasing version of you who absorbed the world's pain. It's a grounded, powerful you, someone who feels deeply but doesn't drown, loves fiercely but doesn't lose themselves. Carl Jung's vision of individuation, becoming your whole self, shows us that the sovereign empath is the result of embracing your shadow, setting boundaries, and living authentically. In this final chapter, we'll explore what it means to rise as a sovereign empath, why this transformation is your greatest strength, and how to embody this power every day. What is a sovereign empath? Carl Jung would describe them as someone who's integrated their opposites, light and dark, empathy and strength, giving and receiving. You're no longer a sponge soaking up others' chaos. You're a mirror, reflecting truth with clarity and love. The sovereign empath doesn't chase approval or fear rejection. They walk with a quiet gravity, knowing their worth isn't tied to how much they give. This transformation comes from shadow work, where you've faced your anger, claimed your boundaries, and said no without guilt. You've stopped seeing your shadow as a monster and recognized it as your ally, a source of resilience and discernment. This shift is profound because it changes how you move through the world. Empaths often start as rescuers, saving others to feel worthy. But Carl Jung's Individuation teaches that true power lies in saving yourself first. The sovereign empath doesn't love to fix. They love because they're whole. They don't absorb pain indiscriminately. They choose who deserves their energy. This isn't coldness, it's wisdom. By integrating your shadow, you gain the ability to say, I can feel your pain, but I won't carry it for you. That clarity attracts respect and repels those who drain you. To make this real, let's return to James, the 4-year-old teacher from Denver we met in Chapter 2. After his classroom outburst, James felt lost, fearing he'd betrayed his kind persona. Through shadow work, journaling his anger, and visualizing his shadow as a protective warrior, he realized his snap was a call to set boundaries. He started saying no to students' disrespect and yes to his own needs, like taking breaks to recharge. Over time, James transformed. His students noticed a new strength. He was still caring, but no longer a pushover. He became a sovereign empath, teaching with empathy, but standing firm in his worth. His classroom became a space of mutual respect, not one-sided giving. Carl Jung's wisdom here is transformative. The sovereign empath is a mystic, not because they're above the world, but because they're fully in it. You've walked through the fire of your shadow rage, guilt, fear, and emerged with a presence that's both soft and unshakable. You no longer confuse empathy with self-sacrifice, or love with losing yourself. You see others as whole, not broken, and your presence becomes a mirror that helps them see their own strength. This is the gift of integration. You don't just heal yourself, you inspire others to heal. How do you embody the sovereign empath? Start with daily boundaries. Each morning, ask, what's one way I'll protect my energy today? It could be declining a draining invitation or carving out 10 minutes for yourself. Next, practice discernment. Before helping someone, pause and ask, is this mine to carry if it's not? Let it go with compassion. Finally, honor your shadow. When anger or resentment arises, don't push it away, listen. Ask, what's this teaching me, James? For example, use these steps to maintain his balance. When a student tested him, he calmly set a consequence, honoring his shadow's need for respect without losing his empathy. This embodiment isn't a one-time achievement, it's a practice. Carl Jung reminded us that individuation is a lifelong journey. There'll be days when old patterns creep back, when you overgive or fear saying no. That's not failure. It's humanity. Each time you choose yourself, you strengthen your sovereignty. The sovereign empath doesn't aim for perfection. They aim for presence, showing up as their whole self, shadow and all. And here's the magic as a sovereign empath. You change the world around you. Your boundaries set a new standard, attracting relationships that honor your depth. Your clarity inspires others to face their own shadows. James's transformation didn't just shift his classroom, it deepened his friendships. People valued his honesty, not his endless giving. Carl Jung would say this is the alchemy of the soul. By becoming whole, you become a beacon, not a sponge. Your journey as an empath isn't about dimming your sensitivity, it's about wielding it with power. You've snapped, faced your shadow, and chosen integration. Now, you're not just surviving, you're thriving as the sovereign empath you were born to be. How has facing your shadow made you stronger? Maybe it's a boundary you set or a truth you claimed. Share your story in the comments. Your voice could spark someone else's awakening. In our final chapter, we'll wrap up this journey with a powerful call to embody your sovereignty and live as your truest self. Stay with us as we uncover the path to your radiant wholeness. You've journeyed through the heart of your empath soul, felt the weight of others' pain, faced the snap that shook you, and met the shadow you once feared. Through Carl Jung's wisdom, we've uncovered why empaths snap, how childhood wounds shape their fear, and how shadow work transforms pain into power. You're not broken for snapping, you're breaking free. From Sarah's burnout to James's boundaries, you've seen that the shadow isn't your enemy, it's your path to individuation, the journey to your whole. So war ein Self. You're not just an empath, you're a mystic, a mirror, a force of love and strength. This 40-minute exploration has shown you that your sensitivity is a gift, but it doesn't have to be a curse. By embracing your shadow, your anger, your boundaries, your right to say no, you've claimed a power that no one can take away. The sovereign empath doesn't absorb the world's chaos. They radiate clarity, loving fiercely without losing themselves. Carl Jung taught us that wholeness isn't perfection, it's courage. The courage to be both light and dark, giver and receiver, human and divine. Now, it's your turn. How has facing your shadow changed you? Maybe you set a boundary that felt like freedom or found strength in a moment of rage. Share your story in the comments below. Your truth could spark someone else's awakening. If this journey resonated, hit that like button, subscribe to Jung Psyche Hub, and tap the bell to join our community of soul seekers. Share this video with someone who needs to embrace their shadow and rise. Let's keep diving into the psyche together. Thank you for being here, for feeling deeply, and for choosing your sovereign self. Your wholeness is your power. Shine it boldly.